Winston Peters, thank you for joining us. After nearly 1 year in government as part of the coalition, what do you think New Zealand First's biggest success has been?
Well, there have been many of them, and some of them are taking time to develop, as we always said they would. But the biggest success has been to stop what was happening and to turn that around in a compulsive way where the public understands what we're doing. You will have seen that the opposition have the belief, and certain sections of the opposition have no respect for democracy. They think, although they lost the election and seriously lost it, that they got a right to carry on in the same way as they did before, when they were behaving and putting into place policies they'd never announced and they had no permission for and no license from the electorate. So our biggest success is to stop that sort of trend and turn that around. And we're critical on that because our votes were the critical ones.
So I'm sure you all heard it. Let's play it again. I believe it was at 33 seconds, or 32 will do. The good thing that Winston Peters and New Zealand First are there is the previous guys basically did things that they didn't have a mandate to do, right? Listen to it again.
For when they were behaving and putting into place policies they'd never announced and they had no permission for.
They putting in place policies they never announced and had no policy for. Say it again.
They were behaving and putting into place policies they'd never announced and they had no permission for.
No permission for.
And no license from the electorate.
And no license from the electorate. Never announced, no permission for, no license from the election. And as you see, I got to there and went, okay, so we can now do a whole night on this, Chewy, because the reason New Zealand First is doing well, according to New Zealand First, is they've stopped all the policies that the previous government never announced, had no permission for, and had no license for. So the last guys did lots of that, and we've stopped doing that. And I imagine in the chat right now, of course we could talk about smoke-free 2025, never announced, no permission, no license for, that went. We could talk ferries, never announced, no license for, no permission for. Or we could also start to talk about not just the things that they never announced, but the stuff that they did announce and then went against their word. Should we talk about Dunedin Hospital? So I got 47 seconds into that conversation before an absolute bullshit, horseshit lie came out. And I thought, well, that's enough for me for tonight. We don't need anything else. Because apparently Winston Peters wants to be a part of a government that always announces, always gets permission, and always gets license, unless it's like smoke-free 2025 in the ferries. Then we don't have to do that for those, Chewy. Exhibit A, yours, sir.
Oh, Winston Peters is a constant source of aggravation for me, and has been at least since I was 16 years old. Like, I just don't know whether he's just high on his own supply all of the time, if his just default setting is to be a combative, grumpy old prick at every stage. But his lack of awareness about what he's actually saying is bananas. Well, because we didn't vote. Like, he doesn't have a mandate. He scraped it. And the only reason he's there is because Luxon is an utter incompetent. Like, people did not vote for this version of the government. There's an argument there that, you know, I mean, we've talked about the percentages. You know, ACT has 8%. Winston should be there to the point of 40. Can we have 4% of Winston, please? Can we hear from? We'll divide up the term, the 3-year term, into a portion of 100, and we can hear from Winston 4% of that time. I would agree with that. I'm sorry, you've used up all of your allocation. Sit there and shut the fuck up for 2.5 years. Would be great.
The other one that I just thought of as we were talking was the lovely people of Tararua who paid for their road are now telling it's going to be tolled. No permission, no license, didn't campaign on that.
So someone on Reddit educated me, because I was like, oh, you know, look, they were banging the drum about the ferries before the election. No, they weren't. They weren't. The first mention of Nicola Willis talking about ferries was after they won in December. They didn't campaign on it. I can't find an earlier mention of them saying about the big cost blowouts. That came after.
Yeah, it wasn't campaigned on. I mean, what they'll probably say is we didn't know that we were going to get rid of them until we got the books. That's bullshit because they had pre-fu, and if they didn't have the ability to understand what pre-fu was, then they should never be in charge of our books anyway.
Oh, you want to talk about some other nonsense? What about the long tunnel under Wellington? Right, the one that we sent was absolute bullshit. Like, it was never going to work. Never ever go. Why even considering it? It's literal insanity. Cool. So they finally realized that after spending $1.6 million
on consultants, 1.7 million on consultants
to find out that's not a good idea, and they're going with 2 short tunnels, mirroring the tunnels that are already there instead. I could have fucking told you that, and I could have done it for the cost of a Happy Meal. No. Sat down with Simeon at the same time and said, "This is stupid, little Simeon. Play with your toy and fuck off." But no, we pissed away $1.6 million that could have been put into a hospital.
I tweeted about this.
I know a place that you can put a hospital. It's quite close by.
And I don't have a big Twitter following, but this had 10,000 views. The mega tunnel under Wellington has been canned like it was ever going to get off the ground. And this anti-consultant government, according to their pre-election narrative, has spent 1.7 million on consultants before they caught up with reality about the tunnel. I had someone say to me straight away, "It's awesome now that you're focused on government spending. Where were you in the previous 6 years?" To which I responded, "It's awesome that you don't care about government spending. Where were you in the previous 6 years?" Because, this is the thing. People play whataboutism, and someone says, "But what about Labor? They had things." And I said, "Well, no. Remember, we judge these guys based on the standards they expected of the other government, the previous government, and the standards that they set for themselves. And the standard that they set for the previous government was don't spend all that money on consultants."